Bom, vamos lá então, gente. Eu peço desculpa, né, tava tendo um problema aqui, acho que vocês não estavam me ouvindo. Então vamos lá. Obrigado a todos pela presença, né? Eu dei boa noite para um monte de gente, acho que ninguém ouviu, né, eu falando, mas agradeci aí a presença de bastante gente. Obrigado pela presença de todos, obrigado, né, por quem também vai assistir essa sessão gravada. Hoje nós temos uma sessão especial aqui, né, em parceria com a Capgemini e a Copado. É uma sessão bem bacana, inovadora, que eu acredito que é um tema super relevante, né, hoje em dia no ecossistema, que é especificamente Data Cloud e inteligência artificial, né. Nós estamos aqui com o Marcelo Giacomo, representando a Capgemini, vai contar um pouco para nós aí sobre desafios de esteira, né, e DevOps e governança. E nós estamos aqui também com o Carlos Henriques, que é um diretor de alianças da Copado, o Kevin Blossom, que é engenheiro líder da time da Copado, e o Abhishek, que é um technical architect da Copado, que vieram para fazer a apresentação para nós. Eu já vou agradecer eles também ali. Eu peço um pouco de paciência. A sessão ela vai ser um mix, né, entre português, inglês e espanhol. Então, em alguns momentos aí a gente vai ter, né, a apresentação em inglês ou até em espanhol, né? Então, quem tiver alguma dúvida pode perguntar. Não tem problema. Quem não entender também pode ir perguntando, tá? A gente tenta ir ajudando. E espero que vocês gostem, né? Vai ser uma apresentação prática aí de esteira sobre DevOps, sobre DevOps para Data Cloud, Copado AI, eles vão falar melhor. Então, bem-vindos, Marcelo. Thank you, Carlos, Abhishek, and Kevin. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We are very happy to have you here tonight for us. And we are very happy to have you here. Um, I'm sure that everyone here will enjoy the presentation. It's something very innovator, and I'm sure that will help us a lot to understand the product, to understand what we can do and what we can do better or more. So thank you again, and that's it. That's it. Let's start. Marcelo, if you want, you can start, ok? Marcelo, se você quiser, você pode começar. O Marcelo vai começar, né? Então, obrigado, gente. Thank you, everyone.
Show de bola. Primeiramente, muito obrigado aí pela oportunidade, Chicão, pelo convite, né? É um prazer enorme estar aqui com a comunidade, com o pessoal do Copado. E aí tá aqui o Kevin, o Carlos, o Camilo, o Abhishek, também o Andrés, né? Longa data aí de batalha de CI/CD. E a gente aí poder ter a oportunidade de estar aqui com vocês é excelente. Para quem não me conhece, né, eu sou Marcelo Giacomo, tenho alguns longos anos aí na área de TI, com experiência, principalmente em gestão de projetos, tá? Hoje mais focado aí em Salesforce, principalmente em ambientes muito complexos. Aí tá falando com múltiplos times, múltiplos fornecedores, e a gente sabe, né, quem trabalha com gestão de projeto, bastante pressão ali nas entregas, né? E hoje eu queria trazer uma visão bem prática sobre DevOps, né? Principalmente olhando ali no contexto de CI/CD e o que realmente acontece no dia a dia dos projetos. Tô vendo que tem uma galerinha que está aqui, né? Simone, Jefferson, Igor, Guilmar, Alexander, uma galera que eu conheço aí já, o Eli, bem bacana, né? Bom, quando a gente fala ali, pessoal, de CI/CD, na teoria parece muito bonito, né? Integração contínua, entrega contínua, pipeline atualizado, mas na prática a realidade é bem diferente, né? O que eu vejo com bastante frequência nos projetos, tá, onde que a gente está inserido. Times trabalhando em paralelo, sem estar coordenado com as entregas entre squads, deploy virando um evento de risco, falta de visibilidade que está entrando em produção, e muitas vezes ausência mesmo, tá? De um rollback confiável. Muitas vezes fala que tem, mas quando você vai precisar utilizar o rollback, não existe, né? E isso para mim é um ponto crítico, um dos mais críticos, que a gente está afetando produção. Porque quando algo dá errado, e muitas vezes por ser mal planejado ou por ter alguma influência externa, dá problema. E o time precisa ter segurança para a gente voltar isso atrás, né? Rapidamente, para novamente não impactar o negócio. Sem isso, acaba que a parte de DevOps, de CI/CD, deixa de ser um acelerador ali para o dia a dia, para entregar melhor, mais rápido, com qualidade, e vira um fator de risco, tá? Um fator caos mesmo. E quando a gente entra em cenários ali com Data Cloud, que o time da Copado, né, logo logo vai trazer aqui para a gente, inclusive com a parte do Copado AI, isso intensifica ainda mais, tá? Metadados mais complexos, dependências entre componentes e muita etapa manual pós-deploy, né? Ou seja, muito risco, mais esforço e mais chance de erro, principalmente na madrugada. Galera que trabalha aí com projeto, né, com as entregas, muitas vezes vara à noite e passa para outro dia, né? Para a gente ter ali que acabar de entregar o projeto ou fazer um rollback. Então acaba sendo uma loucura, né? Eu então, antes da gente falar ali de ferramentas, já falei que deu um spoiler aqui, tá, Carlos, o time do Copado AI com relação ali ao Data Cloud. Eu gosto de olhar para a maturidade do DevOps, tá? Então, se a gente fosse colocar aqui numa escala, eu colocaria ali em 3 níveis. O nível caótico, que aí é deploy manual, sem controle, alto índice de retrabalho, é um coleguinha quebrando o outro, muito ali mesmo, sem nada de controle, né? Então esse é o chamado caótico. Muitas vezes a gente tem ali o nível 2 que é um controlado, né? Já existe um CI/CD, já existe ali tá um início de governança, mas com alguns gaps. Com gap, falta de previsibilidade, de visibilidade. Então esse aí é o 2, né? Muitas empresas estão nele. E tem o escalável, que é o nível 3. Aí a gente tem já uma pipeline estruturada, uma governança clara, confiança no processo, né? E a grande virada não é tecnologia para mim, tá? Quando a gente está falando ali de entregar valor para o cliente no final do dia, é a gente colocar tudo aquilo que negócio almeja em produção, tá? Então a gente sai de um modelo ali onde o deploy é um problema, que a gente, né, citei aqui vários processos, para um modelo onde que o deploy ele é previsível, né? E isso passa por alguns pilares na minha visão, na minha opinião, né? A gente tem ali padronização de processos, rastreabilidade de ponta a ponta, né? Desde quando nasce aí os store até a entrega em produção, passando por diversas etapas ali do processo de DevOps. E automação com controle, não é que a automação cega, né? E a capacidade real de rollback. A gente chegar lá, ou seja, para um problema no componente, ter que voltar, ou realmente deu ruim ali para uma API externa, algo que a gente já está aí acostumado no dia a dia, e precisa de voltar, né? E aí você tem que ter confiança para voltar a isso. Hoje, se vocês não conseguem responder, por exemplo, o que entrou em produção, quem alterou, como eu volto isso, né? Faço aí o rollback. Para mim, na verdade, é muito claro. Você não tem aí um CI/CD de verdade, né? Precisa de estar estruturando essa questão. Aí pegando esse gancho, é exatamente aqui que entra o papel de plataformas como o Copado, né? Eu já conheço o Copado aí há alguns anos, que ela ali tá para ajudar, para colaborar. Então, por que que o Copado, na minha visão, não resolve só a questão de deploy? Ele resolve questão de organização, pessoal, né? De vários dos stores, a gente precisa de organizar. Com o Copado você consegue, por exemplo, estourar uma pipeline de verdade, garantindo a restabilidade. Mais uma vez, né, desde quando nasce a história lá atrás, até a produção, tá? Você gerencia múltiplos times trabalhando na mesma org. Galera que tá trabalhando aí de madrugada com múltiplas squads, sabe que como isso é um desafio. Você ter ali um merge num código, precisando fazer. Se não tem ali uma ferramenta que te ajude nisso, muitas vezes acaba sendo um caos. E principalmente a gente reduzir ali o risco daquilo que antes que acontece do deploy. Depois que fez o deploy, já era. Você voltar para trás, colocar uma US para correção, já foi. E a partir disso, usando a questão do copado, isso muda completamente o jogo. Porque vai sair de um cenário onde o time tem medo de subir, eu já vi isso várias vezes, tá? Quem trabalhou comigo aí, né? A gente Você não tem confiança, então você tem medo de pegar uma release, né? A verdade é essa. Para um cenário aonde que você tem, ou seja, você transita ali num cenário onde que você tem medo, desconfiança, dificuldade. Com o Copado, você passa a ter um cenário onde existe confiança no projeto, no processo, você consegue se organizar melhor, o time começa a descansar, porque a galera que está na madrugada, puxa vida, às vezes você fica muito cansado, e depois no outro dia vai render mal, né? Então, você tem esse benefício aí na minha visão. Principalmente quando a gente está falando de projetos enterprise, né? De clientes enterprise, onde tem vários vendas, ou seja, vários fornecedores atuando, o próprio squad do cliente, isso é onde hoje eu mais atuo, né, nos projetos de grande porte. Para mim, isso não é um luxo, não, tá? Ter um Copado, ter uma ferramenta de ponto. Na verdade, uma questão de pré-requisito. Hoje você vê cada vez mais a questão do hype do IA, tudo entregar, né, mais cedo, para ontem. Se você não entrega primeiro, seu concorrente está na frente, então você precisa ter ferramentas que te apoiem nisso, tá? E, e agora passando um pouquinho aqui, né, porque a gente transitou com relação à parte do Copado, do CI/CD, e entrando com o Copado AI, a gente começa a evoluir esse modelo, tá? Você sai de um modelo ali de automação, ou pouca automação, para inteligência, tá? Porque o Copado AI, a gente consegue te ajudar, você consegue antecipar riscos, sugerir melhorias, apoiar na qualidade, na escrita de user store, cenário de teste, e não só ali nessa questão de, né, de ter previsibilidade e ajudar no código, que isso é um outro fator para mim fantástico, né. Você tendo ali principalmente o Copado AI com DevOps, com CI/CD embutido. O Carlos aí, o time vai falar um pouco mais à frente com relação a isso, tá. Isso para mim, então, você pegando todo esse gancho é muito poderoso, porque você reduz, dependência de decisões manuais e aumenta a capacidade e escala dos times, principalmente em ambientes mais complexos, como eu falei, como multivendos, olhando aí a questão também eh, de mais uma nuvem de Salesforce, né, com a parte Data Cloud, enfim. Então, acaba que no final do dia, CI/CD não é só ali como é que eu posso dizer? Não é só questão de pipeline, né? Não é só questão de ferramenta, é sobre previsibilidade, é sobre governança, é sobre confiança, organização. Então, eu definiria bastante com relação ali à confiança de você poder desenvolver, passar para os ambientes e pôr em produção, né, com cautela, deixar seu cliente ali, que é o time de negócio, feliz para poder escalar o negócio, né. Quando isso está bem estruturado, você deixa de reagir a problemas, tá? E começa a escalar com entrega e com segurança. Você deixa o seu time ali preparado para poder pensar em estratégias novas, né? De implementar coisas diferentes e que são benéficas e valiosas para o negócio. E para a galera trabalhar tranquila. Mais uma vez, eu falei um pouco mais cedo com relação à madrugada, né? Já trabalhei muito na madrugada. E quando você tem muito processo manual ou problema na sua esteira, você vai ter dificuldade para, cara, trabalhar, né? Então, você tendo essas ferramentas que te colaboram com relação a isso, para mim é fantástico. Pessoal, de maneira geral, eu queria fazer essa breve discurso aqui logo no início, para passar ali para o time do Copado. Mais uma vez, a gente conhece eles há bastante tempo. Aqui na Capgemini, trabalhamos com o Copado já com alguns desafios, bastante interessante, conseguindo escalar, né, em vários projetos. E é isso. Eu queria agora abrir aí para alguém que quiser comentar alguma coisa, com relação às explanações aqui. E se não, a gente vai passar ali para o dono ali do produto, Carlos.
Boa, boa, Marcelo, obrigado.
Fazer
Não sei se alguém tem alguma dúvida, fica à vontade, o microfone pode ser aberto aí, só levantar a mão e fazer a pergunta, e aí a gente já passa depois para o time da Copada.
Fala, Alan. Boa tarde. Boa noite, né? Boa tarde lá nos Estados Unidos.
Fala, Marcelo, como vai, cara? Tranquilo?
Tô joia.
Já, irmão. Na verdade, era para perguntar se realmente, assim, até o Maurício estava perguntando aqui no chat se você estava partilhando alguma coisa que não estava aparecendo pra gente ou se era suposto você partilhar, mas acho que não, né? O pessoal
Não, era
agora
mais.
vai
Quem,
compartilhar.
quem vai passar é a galera, mas passando um pouco aqui do dia a dia, da minha experiência, enfim. das madrugadas, de ferramenta que não funciona, ou dá aquela
Uhum.
dificuldade. E assim, cara, o que eu tô falando aqui, vocês podem ter uma outra visão, mas pegando a experiência que eu tenho junto com meus arquitetos ao longo do tempo, né, com o time de release, são muitos desafios que a gente tem, né, tem entrega de
Sim,
produção, né. Você pode
sim.
tem vários lugares que você pode quebrar o código, merge, etc, né.
Uhum. Não, eu trabalhei com Copado também na Odido, Holanda, antiga T-Mobile. Cara, assim, é next level. É muito da hora. Então, realmente, é uma ferramenta que traz a diferença para mesa, tá? Ó, o
Cara,
Maurício
traz.
aí,
Ó,
levantou a mão.
Maurição. Tava apresentando não, Maurição. Você tava indo aqui no speech mesmo.
Não, boa, boa. Eu pensei que você estava apresentando alguma coisa. Valeu pela apresentação e pela informação. E a parte da AI, robótica, agora que o Copado está bem pesado nisso daí, o que você vê no todo o ciclo do pipeline, desde o desenvolvedor tá criando o pacotinho lá, a informação, tudo bonitinho, colocando os componentes, depois fazendo validação e tudo. O que o AI ele vai trazer de benefício nesse processo?
Cara, dividindo aí um pouquinho, né? A gente tem o Robotic Testing, que é até uma feature do Copado, tem o AI, você pode ter as duas dentro do pacote, né? O AI ali do Copado, você consegue, por exemplo, pedir ele para revisar os store, ou criar uma user store, né? Você consegue revisar seu código, e aí revisando, ele já, se você tiver o CI/CD dentro do seu ambiente, ele já conhece, você consegue conectar ali para ele poder já interpretar algumas coisas dentro da própria esteira. E o Robotic Test para mim é fantástico. Eu acho que não sei se o time da Copado também pode dar uma pinceladinha, que é uma outra ferramenta para mim fantástica, né? Nesse processo de automação ali e também com relação ao teste de qualidade, né? Você automatiza muitas coisas dentro da esteira. E um ponto que você falou, tá tudo dentro da mesma esteira, né? Então você não precisa de ferramentas adicionais para fazer isso. Você está fazendo tudo ali dentro.
Boa, valeu. Espera aí que vocês vão apresentar o Robotic, que essa é uma das coisas que a gente está mais querendo ver, pelo menos eu, né? Eu estou querendo ver como que funciona todo o pipeline com toda essa parte de AI, Robotic, tudo junto, para cada vez livrar mais o tempo da gente e tudo
É isso, cara.
e acelerar a vida.
Aquela parte de
Ter
cobertura
ganho
de
real na
teste, né?
esteira, né, Maurício?
Sim, bem real, né?
Exato.
Porque falando, não, vamos falar a verdade, né? Eu trabalhei bastante tempo como release manager e engineer dentro da ExxonMobil, e a gente tinha um Flosson lá. Mas o Copado a gente não conseguiu implementar porque os outros 3 times não gostaram da cara. Né? Só fui voto vencido.
Só do formatozinho, né?
Eu fui voto vencido. Os caras não. Mas eles estão sofrendo hoje lá, depois que sair. Mas é essa parte que eu achei bem interessante do sistema da Copado, que é toda a facilidade, toda a aceleração do processo. Você não precisa ficar sofrendo mais. Então, isso aí, quando veio, até no Dreamforce passado, eu fiz também, puxando essa dica para o meu lado, eu fui um dos influencers que fez a parte de campanha dentro do Copado lá, e eu fiquei bastante curioso. Eu tive uma apresentação, mas eu tive uma apresentação bem rapidinha, assim, com gente falando do meu lado lá, e falei, cara, eu quero ver esse negócio trabalhando, porque realmente eu vejo um ganho. E, bom, espero que vocês possam aí, pelo menos, dar uma colherzinha de deixar para a gente aí, porque eu sei que uma coisa é ver falar, a outra coisa é ver acontecer, né?
Ver na prática, né?
O que a gente pode fazer depois com o time da Copado aqui, depois a gente pode fazer, se o Chicão, né, nos convidar mais uma vez, fazer uma sessão específica também, que eu acho que vale até uma apresentação. Que é um capítulo que, para mim, você consegue ter vários benefícios em termos de produtividade e ganhar ali realmente agilidade na sua esteira, tá?
Desculpa, eu estava olhando do lado porque eu estou acompanhando a implementação.
Cara, minha câmera fica... boa, a vida nossa.
Eu estou acompanhando a implementação da empresa lá nos Estados Unidos, que eles estão rodando ali, eles estão... Mas é isso daí, cara, tipo assim, é entender mesmo, porque o Copado não é à toa que é o número 1 no mundo nessas ferramentas. Então, tipo assim, quanto mais a gente não precisa meter a mão na massa, melhor. E quanto mais com confiança, melhor ainda, né? Então... Vou lá, se tiver um outro evento aí, ó Francisco, Chicão, puxa lá, meu.
Puxa aí, vamos convidar a galera aí.
Aqui. Claro, não, vamos sim.
E
Eu
gostei da
acho que
ideia,
tem
viu?
bastante coisa, né, para a gente falar. E é importante, eu acho, né, Maurício, a comunidade conhecer, né, as opções, né,
Sim.
divulgar, né, essas opções e ferramentas, né, como a Copado aí ajudam bastante, né, no dia a dia. Muitas vezes as pessoas nem sabem, né, Copado a gente sabe que é uma ferramenta que está ganhando espaço, né, tem bastante espaço fora do Brasil, né, no Brasil não são tantos clientes assim, mas que a ideia é a gente começar a expor ela cada vez mais aí, né.
Sim, boa.
Legal.
Obrigado,
Bom,
Maurício. Obrigado, Alan,
obrigado.
pela pergunta. E, Francisco, obrigado por ter
Valeu.
aberto aí para a gente poder falar um pouquinho. Prazer.
Pô, que isso.
Passar
Obrigado
aí para
vocês. Obrigado aí,
Copado.
Maurício, também aí pelo apoio. Bom, Carlos, fica à vontade. Agora é com você. Up to you, my friend. Let's go.
Perfecto, obrigado. E obrigado a todos pela sua participação. We're excited to present to you guys the topic of AI-powered Salesforce DevOps with the focus on Copado for Data 360, as well as Copado AI. My name is Carlos Enriquez. I lead, as Marcel mentioned, our partnerships in LATAM and Brazil, which includes Capgemini. I'm joined by two members of the team, Karen and Abby, who represent basically a technical deep dive of what we're going to be covering for you guys today. In terms of agenda, we'll do a quick, just level set on what Copado is. Some of you guys may be familiar with Copado. Some of you guys may not know our newest offering. So this will just be a quick level set expanding on what Marcelo just presented and, kind of like talk to you guys about. Then Abby is going to dive deep into data 360 decoding and what are some of the challenges that we're starting to see and how Copado can help you guys with those challenges. And then Kevin's going to dive into Copado AI to help you guys understand how it can help you through your end-to-end DevOps lifecycle. We'll open it up for questions for you guys, and obviously we're going to wrap up with giving you guys access to Copado certification vouchers for your attendance today. So expanding a little bit onto what Marcelo communicated to you guys, right? Obviously, you guys know Salesforce. It's a very powerful platform, but implementing it is anything but simple, right? And that complexity is just growing over time. The moment you start adding, some of the newest products and offerings that Salesforce continues to bring to market, which includes Agentforce, Data 360, RCA, Experience Cloud, Commerce Cloud, you name it. Right, and this is all on top of the existing applications that you guys or clients may already have implemented and managing those upgrades and maintenance to what it's already existing. All of this only gets much more complicated because you guys also got multiple teams that are touching, Salesforce. Some of them are, pro coders, some of them are low coders, some of them are in-house developers, some of them are SI developers. Everyone works in the same environment, obviously, which adds to the complexity, and everyone having different priorities. So what happens is, this is where things start to break down because you end up with merge conflicts, sandboxes that are out of sync, bots that are slipping into production, and not really having visibility as to where the bottlenecks are in your process. Because of this, your projects oftentimes get delayed, right? And your team sometimes spends more time fixing issues than building new stuff. So this is the reality that probably all of you guys are already familiar with, right? By being in the Salesforce ecosystem, and really the reason why Copado exists today and what was built to us. The main takeaway that I want you guys to leave with is what our focus here is for us is how do we help you? How do we help our customers eliminate all these delivery obstacles that you guys have? How do we help you guys accelerate the time to value? And how do we help you increase the efficiency of the delivery you're doing today by eliminating or reducing your technical debt? Obviously, in today's world where AI is raising the bar and budgets are under pressure, these aren't really like nice to haves anymore. These are like business imperatives for every business today and every company that is trying to move fast. So how does Copado, deliver on all of these goals, right? It starts really with an end-to-end platform that is purpose-built for Salesforce. It covers every stage from the planning all the way to, and it's a platform that is basically composed of three main core products. You guys have Copado CI/CD, which is probably the part that you guys are most familiar with, right? For automated conflict-free deployments. You guys also have Copado testing, to help you catch bugs before, you reach into production, or help you move from manual to automated testing. And also you have Copado AI, which really brings the intelligent layer and automation across your entire pipeline and process. So the idea here is, how do we take you guys from idea to impact faster, safer, and with full value across the spectrum? And we're proud to say that, we're working with some of the world's most recognizable. This includes some local in Brazil, like Claro, Supergras, in the US right now, in the in Brazil today, but really across every single industry, right? Every company, every organization that is has Salesforce today is experiencing some level of challenges related to this. So we're happy to say that we're helping a lot of these brands, advance and move faster. But really, the heart of it all is Copado AI. What Kevin's going to be talking to you in a little bit and showing you in action is really the engine that understands your Salesforce org and your metadata. And it's embedded across every phase of your DevOps lifecycle, from planning all the way through operating in production. What makes Copado powerful, unlike some of the other general, vibe coding tools that you guys may be familiar with, right? Cursor, GitHub Copilot, and so on, is that Copado AI has specialized agents, for every stage of your process. From planning, build agent, test, release, and operate, right? But it doesn't only stop there. It's also really focused on addressing not only the developer persona and the people that are creating code, but every single persona on your delivery team. That includes, analysts, architects, admins, QA engineers, release managers, change managers. It's really about having a platform and tool that every user can find value in. And how do we know this? Because these are the results that already speak for themselves. Those are early wins and customers that are already seeing gains from using Copado AI across different use cases and personas. Examples of that include 83% reduction in Apex test class generation, 15% in user story generation, 22% in designing technical documentation, 23% in production support and debugging, right? This is the kind of impact that Copado and our partners are really helping bring customers, basically helping them unlock this value every single day. And now that we're kind of like really leveled up on Copado, I want to pass over to Avi, who's going to deep into Data 360, as well as who will follow that with, what intelligent DevOps looks like in practice today. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it over to Avi.
Awesome. Thanks, Carlos. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, perfect. So, hey everyone, my name is Abhishek Saxena. As you've seen and heard from our earlier presenters, I'm a technical architect here at Copado. I've been with Copado for about 4+ years now, but I've been doing Salesforce DevOps for a very long time, probably 8 years, give or take, which has been most of my career. So I feel really passionate about this topic, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of any questions that you guys might have related to Data 360 or anything else related to deployments. This particular area around Data 360 is has been very, very complicated, because, and we'll talk through some of what it entails, but I would love to leave you guys with knowing that Copado solves Data 360 deployments. So the way I have the few slides configured next is basically we'll talk about how to without Copado, what is the mechanism for deploying Data 360? What are its challenges? Then we'll take a look at a demo of how Copado helps with Data 360 deployments, and that's where we'll end off the Data 360 portion for today. So without any further ado, let's get started. So if you do not have Copado, then you have to create something called as a data kit. Now, what is a data kit? So, data kit is like a container, it's like a package, or you can think of it like a chain set, but it's not a chain set, it's not a package. It's just a container where you link all the data 360 components that you might have created. And when you're creating it on the UX, there could be 10, 20, 30 different items that you are creating. And we'll see a few examples of them shortly as well. But in a data kit, you essentially add in your all the components that you have created. And once you have added it to the data kit, then you got to move the data kit from your source org into your target environment. So that's the process we want to simplify. And then even after you have moved the data kit into your target environment, you need to activate that data kit, or basically extract it. Think of data kit like a zip file. And once you port over that zip file, you've got to unzip everything. And that's the third step that's required in a data 360 deployment. There are two types of data kits. There are standard data kits, and then there are DevOps data kits. So we'll be talking about the DevOps data kits, which support metadata API. Other ones, the standard data kits, are available in all instances, and they support packaging and chain sets. But we want to work with the ones that we'll be using in a sandbox, and we can actually deploy using Copado. So we'll be taking a look at these DevOps type of data kits. So this is an example of how you add in components inside a data kit, and we'll see a detailed example shortly in my demo as well. But you can see that I have a bunch of things over here in data kit already. I've got a few data streams. I've got a bunch of data models. I have one data lake object, and I actually had a lot other stuff as well that I couldn't capture in this screenshot. But we'll look at it inside the demo as well. So you not just add your components inside this data kit, but you also define something called as a publishing sequence. So you see this second tab right over here. That's what defines that when you unzip or when you extract this data kit in your target environment, in which order those components should be recreated in the target environment. So that's the next thing that you got to define inside a data kit. So you can see I've defined the sequence that, hey, uh, number one sequence, unpack my connection. Number two, data streams, data lake objects, calculated insight, so on and so forth. Why is this very important? I cannot run with an arbitrary sequence. I cannot start with identity resolution. Why? Because creating identity resolution requires a calculated insight to be created, which requires a data lake object, which requires data streams, which require connection. So that's why it's very important to define the order in which you gotta unpack these things in your target environment. And once you have these two things, then the last thing you got to do in your target environment after you have moved is actually click on this data kit deploy button. So we'll take a look at all of this inside my demo org. So don't worry if you have some questions and right now. We'll try to solve them when we are actually inside my org. Now, what are the challenges that even if you have added things over here in the data kit, what are some of the issues that customers face when they're trying to move this data kit from your development org into your target org? So first of all, data kit, when you add, like you saw, I've added a lot of things in the data kit. And if I want to move the data kit without Copado, you'll have to deploy the whole data kit every single time. Sure, when you're deploying it for the first time, everything is new. But when you are installing it subsequently, you would only want to deploy the changes, right? You wouldn't want to overwrite everything every single time. That would unnecessarily take your data 360 credits as well, because everything will run the data processing and all of that. So this is one of the issue, that you have to create several data kits, or if you want to reuse an older one, it's just going to recreate everything that was inside that data 360 data kit. The other issue that we face is that data 360's metadata components have a lot of dependencies. There are, first of all, there are like a lot of different metadata types, and those lot of different metadata types have very complex dependencies. So it's not like that if you have added everything into a data kit, that's enough. That's not enough. You still have to add the other dependencies of those components, and figuring those out without Copado is not an easy task. So that's something that we'll also take a look at, how we get past with Copado. And lastly, like I sort of alluded to already, that there is a very complex metadata structure for data 360. Even if on the UX you see one thing, on the back end there could be 5 6 metadata types that actually represent a single metadata component, or a single component inside data 360. So understanding them, as well as trying to retrieve and deploy them without Copado, becomes very very complex. Some of these metadata types have arbitrary values attached to them, and we'll take a look at them in the demo as well. So hopefully some of this will be highlighted again. So these are some of the challenges that customers will face without Copado for Data 360. Just summarizing them, if you deploy everything again, you run the risk of overwriting your components that you have already deployed. There are some challenges if multiple developers are working on. You run the risk of getting into merge conflicts. Plus, if you do not have something like Copado, things are not in version control. If they are not in version control, then of course, yeah, you cannot track how they're changing. And since there are so many dependencies, you could see how the deployments fail. Your deployments could easily fail if you do not add all of them. Without Copado, if you had to move a particular data kit, there are three options. Either you use metadata API commands on your VS Code and CLI commands, or you use, as I said, you use something like chain sets, or you used packages. All of these approaches have some drawbacks. Like, of course, if you want to use metadata API, your admins cannot use it. Like I said, you gotta work through the dependencies. The name of metadata types are very difficult to identify. There are so many different types. With chain sets, you cannot commit anything into the version control. You do not have history. With packages, also, you're installing a package. So that is a whole different process if you're not following packaging in your rest of the pipeline. And packages accumulate, right? How many packages are you going to create for every single short deployment? So with some of these things in mind, let's actually go ahead into my org and try to look at all of this again, but sort of in a live environment. So hopefully it would make a little bit more sense. So I'm switching to a sandbox where I've got my data 360 set up. And if you see, I've got a lot of data streams. I've got a bunch of DLOs. I have their respective DMOs created inside here as well. I've got identity resolution rule sets created here. Some calculated insights might be here as well. Let's see. Yes, some calculated insights are there too. So yeah, and like you're seeing all of this one by one, nothing is independent. Like I said, calculated insight requires identity resolution, which requires data models, data lake objects, data streams. So all of this needs to be moved in a certain sequence and then processed in that sequence one by one, because since you're sometimes working on like millions of records, if not more, right? In Salesforce, we are more accustomed to having just the 50,000 records, which is much more palatable to Salesforce. But with the whole thing about data 360 is that you could have a lot of different records, and that's why things take much longer than they do with regular Salesforce operations. So how do I move all of this? I have created this application. Now, how do I move this into my target environment? So for that, we have to go to the Data Cloud setup. So I've got that right open over here. And on my Data Cloud setup, I have to navigate to Data Kits. I'll have to open up Data Kits, and you'll see there's a button for creating a new data kit. like I said, will choose the DevOps type of data kit. You can give it a name, API name, and description. I already have one created right over here. So let's take a look at this DK01. As you can see, it is of type DevOps. And I've added a bunch of things over here. I've added a few data models. I've added a data lake object. Let's see what else do we have over here. We've got the calculated insight. We've got a search index added over here. We've got an identity resolution. And you can see there are a lot of other things that if I had created, I could add them to data 360. So immediately you can see how many different type of metadata items are there in data 360. And like I was alluding to, even a single one of them, so for instance, a data model, it's not a one-to-one relationship when you look at the metadata API. Even for one data model, there could be 3, 4 different files which might have very complex nomenclature for you to understand how to move them. And this, just adding, like I said, just adding this is not enough. These components further have dependencies that could be that you need to move in order for deployments to be successful. So let's look at how Copado helps with some of that. So since now I have my data kit created, I'm going to switch over to Copado, where you can see I've got my pipeline set up for data 360. uh, this right over here is my production org, which has a UAT org connected, which is connected to a QA environment, and then I have my dev environment. There's also a hotfix environment created right over here. So for my work, of course, I'm working right now in my dev sandbox. So I'm going to work on a user story that is in dev environment. So let me switch to the user story that we'll be working on. So this is the user story. I can see this is related to my data 360 work that I need to deliver today. I have chosen the Data Cloud Sandbox as the environment where I'm working. With that chosen, let's go ahead and try to add the components, add the data kit that we had created. So what Copado has done is Copado like now treats the data 360 components just like any other metadata types. So that's what we'll see over here, that we'll be able to add the data 360 components. So I'm going to search for the data kit that I had created. So the metadata API name of data kits is data package kit definition. That's what I've searched. And you can see all the data kits that are there in my org are now visible to me over here. Since we're working on DK01, that's what we'll look at over here today. Now, without Copado, if you're moving this data kit, like if you remember, one of the problems that I highlighted was that you'll have to move the whole data kit together. But with Copado, what we have done is that you can expand the data kit and just selectively move certain components out of it. So as you can see, I've expanded the DK01 data kit, and you can see a lot of things are part of it. There are some DLMs which are of type custom field. Then this is my calculated insight. There are some dependencies, some data kit objects. There is a lot of stuff, right, that I added inside it. So without Copado, if I was just moving this data kit, I'll have to move the whole thing together. But with Copado, I can, even if I've deployed this before, I can remove some of the stuff that, hey, I do not want to commit this. I just want to commit the other things. So that's one of the things that we have added with Copado. The other thing that we have added with Copado is this dependency analysis. So this might have run really quickly, but as soon as I selected this data kit, so let's unselect it and try to select it again, you can see this dependency analysis is running. Now, what is this telling me? This is telling me that I cannot just deploy my data kit in silo. There are some dependencies that I need to add, and only then my deployment is going to be successful. So I'm going to click on it, and here you can start seeing that my data, this type of data kit dependency, which was inside, is dependent upon a data source object, which in turn is dependent upon other 19 things like data source field, some other things. So I need to move all of this, otherwise my deployment would fail. So that's this dependency analysis for data 360 components is the next thing that Copado has added for data to improve the data 360 deployments. The third thing that Copado has added is this compare button. So let's see how does this work. So I'll show it to you in one data kit that does not exist in the target org. I think this DK04 does not exist. Let's click on compare. There you go. So you can see I'm right now comparing the DK04 in my destination, which is my data cloud QA, versus my data cloud dev. So at the fly, I can compare the XML files or the actual code base of how the components look like in my source versus destination environment. And not just the destination environment, I can compare it with different other things, like I can compare it with Git branches, some other environments in my pipeline. So that's the comparison that we get that Copado has enabled as well. We also have a selective commit, meaning what does that mean? Let's take a look at the selective commit in an example where some of these components are already there. So, okay, I think DK03 is something that I've already deployed. Let's click on compare over there. So here you can see I've got a bunch of stuff in QA as well. I've got things in my source environment as well. Now let's say only this portion I know is the one I want to move now. So instead of committing this whole file, I have the option of just committing this particular bit and not moving any of the other stuff, because it could be that some other developers are working on some of these other objects that you can see, data source object, data source. So maybe they are working on it and they're not ready for me to move. So I can use this sort of selective commit. I can also manually add some things over here in case I'm not happy with what's how the merge is happening from here. So this selective commit operation for data 360 components is also something that we have introduced, and without Copado, again, you'll have to override just the whole complete file, which could cause some issues. So that's the next thing that we have introduced for data 360 components. When you're happy with what you have selected from over here, you can just come up over here and click on this commit changes button, and that's gonna go ahead and start adding all of these components onto your user story. So let me go back. I actually did the commit on this particular user story over here, and we can look at it inside Git. So Copado created a Git branch for this user story and committed the components in onto that user story. So I had only selected the data kit 04, DK04, but because of that, you'll see what Copado ended up adding. So you can see so many components got added. 76 files got added to my Git repository, and you can see how complex their nomenclature is. 175, some arbitrary random numbers, right? We were not seeing any of this complexity when we actually created this data kit, right? So that's what I meant that by that there is a lot of complex metadata dependencies and the way they are stored that are not easy to understand for anyone. And that's what Copado enables, that hey, you just add and create a data kit, and when you commit it, all of these things that can be moved, that are possible to be moved from metadata API, they'll be taken along and they will be moved inside your Git repository. So that's what committing the components does, and that's where Copado has added some magic as well. Because one of the things that we run into with Data 360 is that not all metadata types are supported to be deployed into the target environment. So we make sure we only commit those things that are relevant and that can be deployed. Once you have done that commit successfully, all that you have got to do is come up over here and start the deployment of the user story. I had actually done a validation right over here before this meeting started. So let's look at that validation, and you can see it is from my source environment to my destination environment. This is for the user story that we were working on, which should come up here in just a second. user story 158, and all the components that were part of that data kit, the different custom fields, everything else is now here. And my validation, as you can see, was successful. So that's how with Copado you're able to commit, deploy, and track these changes in your version control so that you can monitor how they're changing over time. So with that, I just have this one last slide, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to move forward with the Copado AI portion. So just to summarize, with using Copado for Data 360, you are able to track your Data 360 changes in version control, track the components when you're moving them from one environment to the other environment, handle this selective deployments, partial deployments, and overlap between different data kits. You can view these dependencies and thus identify what is going to be the impact or the blast radius of your changes, and you can seamlessly integrate it with any of the other metadata types that you're working on as well, like Agentforce components, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, or any of those type of things. So that's it for me. I'll take a look at if there are any Q&As and try to answer them while I hand it over back to Kevin for his portion.
Perfect. Thank you, Abhishek. So as mentioned, yeah, if you guys have questions on that Data 360 piece at all, feel free to throw those into the chat, and we'll see if we can leave some time after I finish taking us through a bit of AI to have Q&A on all things that we talked about today, not necessarily just the portion that I'm going to go through with you guys now. So I'm going to bring up my screen, and we'll jump directly into the AI platform. All right, so here we're looking at the user interface, and this should be somewhat similar to maybe other AI-powered applications that you guys have used before. And we have all of the historical chats on the left from you engaging with Copado's AI agents, and then we have the actual area right here where you can type in your questions and interact with these different agents. And I want to make sure to state at the very beginning here that there is actually a suite of agents that you're speaking with, not necessarily just one agent. And they have different capabilities, and they encapsulate the entirety of the DevOps lifecycle. And so everything from the plan phase through to build, test, release, and then operate, we have unique and specialized agents for. And so just to give you an example of maybe what one of the things that each of these agents would assist with, the plan agent helps you with your requirements gathering process, generating user stories, providing more detail on existing user stories. Give me just 1 second here. I've got a kid screaming in the background. I want to make sure you guys can hear as little of that as possible.
No problem, Kevin, no problem.
We also have the build agent, which one of the things that it does is helps create your metadata. So you can tell it you want code built, you want declarative configuration to be generated in your environment, and it will do that for you and actually push it to your sandbox. The test agent can generate test plans or even automated tests for what it is that you're building or for capabilities in your Salesforce org. The release agent helps with generating release notes or deciphering deployment errors. And then hopefully we'll get into the operate agent a bit today, which really majors in end user training documentation, anything to help boost adoption for those that are in the Salesforce environment. And so there's, as you can imagine, an infinite number of use cases that we can get into today. But I'll start with one that is really common among our customers, which is using this to actually uncover and fix issues in, let's just say, even your production level environment. See, we have something called org intelligence that powers these agents. And part of this org intelligence comes from its connectivity to your actual CI/CD instance. Think what Abhishek was showing. Being able to orchestrate, instruct, direct these agents to take action, like perform commits and deployments, give you insights about your user stories that you're working on. But the other piece of this is that it's aware of the metadata in your environments. And this has big consequences. If you are architecting something, you want an agent that is able to skim through the entirety of your org, understand what metadata exists there now, so that it can properly advise you on, here's what you need to build brand new. Maybe here's some existing components that you can just modify, and it's going to build it in such a way to where it works best with your org. But one of the other things that you can do is you can commission these agents to go and solve problems that arise in environments of yours. And so, for example, I'm going to tell the build agent, hey, there is an error taking place in our production environment. And I'm just going to simply describe the symptoms of what's going wrong. We are getting account names truncated. We don't know what the cause is, but I want you to go sift through the automation in this environment and determine what it is that's causing that problem. And so even think about just having to check through the flows in an org, how many flows there may be. When you click into each flow, moving through every single one of the elements there and seeing if that's the culprit, or instead this agent sifted through all of that and was able to uncover in less than 20 seconds that, hey, it's actually the opportunity creation automation flow that's causing this problem and truncating the account names. And so it's going to identify here where exactly the logic is in the flow that's causing that problem. And it's going to prompt me, do I want to modify this flow to handle this? Or I could ask for it to come up with a couple of different solutions for me. So let's say that I ask it, what ways can I fix this? This will start to give me some ideas, and I can assess them and decide which one I want to move forward with. Now, one of these would be increasing the actual length of this so it's not truncating it, and maybe saying, hey, we'll do 200 characters instead. And so if I want to actually act upon one of these, I can switch over to the plan agent and say, yeah, I actually do want to increase the character limit to 200 characters. And I want a user story to be built by the agent that's going to allow for me to then ultimately commit and deploy my changes up through Copado. And now we're getting this crisp, detailed user story written up here. And it's doing so because I have the ability to upload documentation to this AI platform that, practically speaking, trains the AI on how it should perform certain actions, like generate user stories or write my code or build out release documentation. And so I simply uploaded this that laid out standards and guidelines for when it creates user stories. And I said, hey, if I ever ask you to make user stories, ensure that you're inputting information for these types of values. You're determining and defining what acceptance criteria is. And here's some context on what I mean by acceptance criteria. I want functional specs. I want technical specs, etc. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen here. My acceptance criteria, functional specs, technical specs. And it's asking me at the very end, do you want me to proceed with actually creating this user story? Are you happy with the way that this looks based on how I proposed? And I could tweak it a little bit or ask for it to change something, or I could just say, yeah, this user story looks fantastic. And then it will go ahead and build that in my actual Copado CI/CD instance for me. And then I could get to the actual development piece of this. So this is going to build out that record, and we'll be able to pop into that environment and analyze that user story together before we necessarily make any changes. Now, the thing too that's really powerful with this, we talked about the metadata awareness. You can ask questions about what it is that you're building and say, help me understand the regressions, right? There could be potential regressions that come from any of your development, and it will assess what you have built or what you plan on building, take a look at your environment and then let you know if there's anything in particular that you need to be on high alert about. So we have this user story that was built. Let me pop into that. And we'll see that it has all of the rich detail that we had printed out for us earlier. We have our user story here, updating the limit of the characters to 200. And here's all that information, acceptance criteria, my different types of specifications, so that this is going to get built the right way. Now we'll come back here, and this is where I could follow up and say, hey, will this user story cause any potential regressions? Skims through the org and then provides a risk analysis. And it looks like I've got good news here. This is a pretty low risk change in general. And what I'd be able to do from this point forward, you guys see how I could come back to the build agent and then say, great, can you actually develop the change for me? Make the new version of the flow and push it to my sandbox, and it will do exactly that. Or we can continue through the remainder of this life cycle and ask about how this could be tested. So I can come over here to the test agent and I'll say, hey, you just identified some regression risks. I want you to build out a script that addresses these potential risks. So here it's going to lay out the different scenarios that it's about to build, and this will include test data and all. Ask for my confirmation, and I'm going to say, yes, build this test script for me. And so for customers of ours, right, Carlos had talked about how there are 3 main products we have, one of them being robotic testing. This has the ability to build out the automated script so that a robot will log into the environment, acting as a human, and move through all the different click paths, generating these accounts of different character limits and ensuring that the new and updated automation is working correctly. So there's a lot here that you can do with these agents. And right, I could flip into the release agent, ask for some release notes based on these changes. The operate agent to build some training documentation. And so a couple of these other things I think will come up in additional use cases that we go through together. But I wanted to give you guys an idea of how our customers are solving very immediate problems in even higher environments by using this to get to that root and then implement a fix, get their testing done the right way, and so on. So let's jump into another example here that's very widely adopted, and that would be something that we call org discovery. So let's say that there's an individual that's new to the team and they're onboarding on the development side or an admin, or maybe you just have a part of the org that you're not as familiar with, haven't built on in a while. There's oftentimes a lot of homework and research that you have to do to really wrap your mind around what exists in that org before you begin any additional development. And now what we can do is we can ask the build agent, hey, help me understand all the customization that's on our opportunity object. And then it will break down for you. Here are the different record types that you have in your environment around opportunities, the key custom field categories, sales process management, how an opportunity actually advances through the life cycle, ultimately being marked as closed won or closed lost, integrations that we have in here, validation rules and how those are all grouped, the automation that we've created. And you can drill deeper with every question. Okay, well, how do leads actually become opportunities? What's the conversion process look like? How have we customized that? And this builds very rich diagrams to help you understand the flow. You can see what conversions are manual versus a batch process, and the code customizations that are most important, like this lead trigger in the environment. And if I ask, okay, well, tell me about this lead trigger and what it's doing, it can provide you with the architecture of the lead trigger with the different triggering events, the helper methods, what's happening before an update or after an insert. all of that. That's going to help you get to where you need to go. If you want to ask about entity relationship diagrams, the build agent can generate those for you too. How does the lead exactly relate to, you know, the opportunity and the account and contact? What are the most important fields on these objects? And again, turning this into action, this is where you could state, here's something that I've been tasked with building. I need to implement sales qualified lead tracking in the lead trigger. Take a look at my org, right? What do I create? What can I reuse? And it will analyze all your metadata and let you know, hey, here are the things that you can reuse. Or here's some things that you need to create, like some custom fields in here, or you may have to modify the lead trigger helper and add some methods. So it will lay all of this out for you. And then you have the option to say, hey, this looks good. Confirm, can you push this down into my sandbox for me? And it will save you all of that development time. And while we're on this topic of code, similar to when we looked at the user story guidelines earlier, we recommend that every group that uses the AI platform also upload some development standards and guidelines. You could take all the code quality rules under the sun, everything from PMD, Salesforce Code Analyzer, you name it, and put that in a document and say, when you build my code for me, I need you to respect these, to build the code, taking those into account. If you have naming conventions that are important to the team, how to handle exceptions, all of that can be put into a document, and then that will be reflected in the code that it builds for you. We'll go through a couple more here. I wanted to bring you into this environment where we have a travel app that's been built. This is something that we actually use internally at Copado, and the intention of this is where individuals such as myself and others would log business trips that they're going to be going on that they'll require some reimbursement from the company for. And I came in here and I logged. This was one of my trips from last year, around March last year, where I had indicated that I'd be traveling to Arizona. We had a company kickoff event, and there were a number of expenses that I was going to require reimbursement for: airfare, hotel, travel, whatever it may be. And all of that is rolling up into my estimated expenses. After I log that, I submit this for an approval, and it moves through the necessary approval process. And something that we were able to do when this was first being built internally is, as we were building it and as we were nearing the end, we came in and said, hey, analyze the org, tell us everything you know about the travel app. It took a look at everything and it laid out, right, these core objects, the business logic that had been built, even the security and permissions that played into it. Again, an architecture diagram. We already went through an example of an entity relationship diagram further. We built this out, and a flow of when a user actually initiates a travel request, what the experience is like, and what's also happening underneath the hood. They request an approval. Here's all the logic in the metadata visualized here so you can easily understand it. And so what we started to do with this is we said, hey, this is something that we're going to roll out soon. Let's use the operate agent and build out some training guides so that the team is able to get prepped up on what's coming and adopt it as quickly as possible. And so it built out a training guide. Here's exactly how it's used, how you add expenses, how you submit for approval, and the best practices or frequently asked questions, what to do if there are issues and you've got to troubleshoot. All of this valuable information right here. And this ultimately led to us being able to administer quizzes internally, believe it or not. We said, build a quiz, a multiple choice quiz for the end users. And it had these questions in here. What's the first step to access this travel app, and so on, so we could ensure that they had the proper knowledge. And so there's a lot of different things that you can use here. Teams are using this too, right? Create 5 exercises for the end users for training, and it will write up all the exercises indicating the data that they should input and the learning objectives, what it is the takeaways are that they should get from each of these exercises that they move through. So lots of different options here, and the operate agent, as you can see, really specializes in adoption, in documentation, even a why document to help the team that was going to be using this. We wanted to get some buy-in, and this laid out for them. Here's all the benefits. It simply looked at the metadata and understood all the benefits here that they would get, where they would be saving time, what it means for the actual users, right? Before the travel app, they had to hunt down paper forms and get signatures, or waiting long periods of time for approval responses, etc. But here are the gaps that the travel app closes. While we're on the topic of the travel app, we'll use this as an example to discuss technical debt. This is used to assess environments, let you know where there's technical debt that is accruing over time. And I prompted this with, hey, take a look at the travel app and let me know if we do have some technical debt. And it identified rather quickly issues like duplicate fields, some that are not being used at all, problems with how flows were designed, or maybe we had some issues here with automation or hard coding values, areas that where we were not following best practices. And so after it diagnosed all of that, I was able to ultimately turn it into a plan and say, build me an implementation plan to fix all of this. And it broke it down into phases for me. And then you'd be able to use the build agent to actually create the changes for you right here so that you didn't have to do them all yourself. So I'll show you two more quick things. Let's talk real practical, utilizing this with the CI/CD solution. In this example here, I came to the build agent and I said, tell me about the apex that exists in this org. Scanned through the org and laid out all the apex, including this date utilities class. And I asked it, okay, well, what does the date utilities class do? And it gave me a synopsis here, or a summary. And I said, okay, well, I need to address the code coverage of this piece of apex. I want 100% coverage instead for this apex class. And then it wrote up a nice lengthy apex class that gives me that 100% coverage that I was looking for, and pushed it down into my sandbox. I created a user story for it, right? We went through this example a little bit ago live, and then ultimately said, can you commit these components to my newly created user story 43? It did the commit for me, so I wouldn't even have to go into that screen that Abhishek was showing where you select your metadata. And then I was able to validate these changes, or I could deploy these changes right from the AI platform too. So there's a lot that you can do without even having to go into Copado, because you can leverage the AI platform to facilitate it. And I'll end with just a couple more instances of exactly how that works. You could, given our connectivity and org intelligence to the CI/CD environment, say, build me a test script to test user story 71. It's just a story in my org. Maybe it originated from Jira or from Azure Boards, analyzed all that, and then wrote up the automated test script where it's going to perform all those scenarios on my behalf. Next, I could inquire about, let's say, a deployment, or we call it a promotion that we did that failed. I could say, well, why did promotion 598 fail? And it's going to analyze that, take a look at the metadata, the deployment error, and then write up exactly what it was that went wrong for me, how I can get to the root cause, the recommended actions that I can take to resolve this deployment error. If I want release notes for maybe a group of user stories inside of my CI/CD environment, I can just ask it to build those from here. And I said, give me some release notes for the TDX release. And now I've got these detailed release notes on some Agentforce changes that are going to be pushed out. And then lastly here, right, I can tell it to take a look at a user story, build the changes for me. It assesses the requirements of the story, looks at my org itself, and then in this case, built out the code that was relevant for the user story. So this really is a force multiplier for those that are doing DevOps on Salesforce. We can help you with the generation of user stories, the building of declarative and programmatic metadata, creating the test scenarios, even automated tests that can run in your environment so that you're not getting slowed down having to perform all these yourself manually. Release notes, deployment errors, end user training documentation, it's all in here to ensure that a team that's using Copado is able to get the most out of the solution. And that's it for me.
Awesome, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you very much. That really great solution. Congratulations to you and Copado.
Thank you, guys.
Just let me check if we have any doubt here. Let me see. Well, let's go for the vouchers and then we open to question, ok? Bom, pessoal, fiquem à vontade em fazer perguntas. O Carlos, né, o Camilo também da Copado, eles entendem português, eles podem ajudar a gente na tradução. Carlos, peça essa ajuda aí pra gente, tá? Se precisar fazer perguntas aí pro Kevin e pro Abi. Então, gente, fiquem à vontade de fazer perguntas. Como o Carlos prometeu, voucher para todos os presentes na nossa sessão estão na tela. Guardem os vouchers, façam as provas, aproveitem a oportunidade para estudar, aproveitem a oportunidade para aprender sobre Copado. É uma baita ferramenta de CI/CD, governança, DevOps, e agora IA, né, na esteira, end-to-end. Então, aproveitem. Quem quiser fazer pergunta, tá aberto, só abrir o microfone, levantar a mãozinha, abrir o microfone e perguntar, gente.
E complementar aí, tá? O Camilo e o Carlos falam português. Você falou que eles entendem, não, eles falam.
Eles falam português. Vai, Jefferson, pode perguntar.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. That was pretty nice. I have a question that I had already when I was studying the materials for the Copado AI. If you could clarify how AI is licensed and billed in practice. What I mean with this, per user, per prompt, per workspace, or as an enterprise add-on. Could you help me with this?
Yes, Jefferson, I can answer that question. So the way Org Intelligence, Copado AI Org Intelligence is done at this point in time is essentially we have 3 packages, a small package, a medium package, and a large package. The difference between the 3 is the number of prompts per account per month that is provided. So the small package will have 1,500 prompts per month per account. The medium, 3,000 prompts per month per account, and the large will have 6,000 prompts per month per account. There's unlimited users within the org, so really the limitation is the consumption on the number of prompts. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, perfectly. And this question brings me to another question, which is related to which AI model currently the LLM, the Copado AI is using, and if, depending of the type of the agent, if the AI model is changing, like if they are using Sonnet or Opus or something like that instead.
Yeah, we're using Anthropic as well as Gemini models. There is a bit of, I think there's some dynamic nature in exactly when it will use what. I know that, certain models are better for certain activities, more of the architectural analysis as opposed to documentation, generation, diagrams. But it primarily is going to be using Anthropic and then supplementing with Gemini on a as needed basis.
Oh, good, good. And is this already set up in the org, or for some reasons can the team that is configured or working with the Copado AI can configure something to adjust something, or everything is already set up when we bought that?
Yeah, I think you actually can shut one of them off. Like you can say, hey, I want to exclusively use Gemini or I want to exclusively use Claude. But yeah, that's in the settings. That's in the settings for the I want to say it's on the team basis. And we're working on some MCP capabilities too in the future, to where it can even be called from other AI tools that a group is using today.
Yeah, nice. Maybe the on-premise MCP from the client could be an option.
I'm not sure if the on-premise element of the MCP makes a difference. I mean, I know that ours is going to be cloud-based, but yeah, that's something that we can look into and get you guys some information on. But we're building a pretty multifunctional MCP that's supposed to open up a lot of connectivity. So,
and promise, I have a last question related to the trust layer. When we are working with Agentforce, and Salesforce is sharing a lot of knowledge about this, what kind of compliance or security we can share with our clients when we are talking and about Copado?
Yeah, the big thing that I would say is, hey, you can enjoy the Copado AI platform and rest easy knowing that it's entirely self-contained in Copado's infrastructure. No information leaves whatsoever. It doesn't go back to where it's taking what you put in and training the LLMs or anything like that. We do not use your information to train the LLMs whatsoever. And each customer has their own dedicated database instance that stores, documents that they upload to help with the AI, or their chat history and workspace data. So it ensures complete isolation between customers as well. And as mentioned, the LLM models do not retain any customer data between requests even.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jefferson, one additional comment to adding to what Kevin was mentioning is that we also provide documentation that we can share with the InfoSec and IT team, so that they can review in a little bit more detail specific to those concerns with regards to security and reviewing the data information. So we can provide that as well too.
Amazing. Thank you, Camila.
Legal. Tem uma pergunta aqui no chat, que se esse process mapping é similar com Elements Cloud. Foi uma pergunta do Thiago Albuquerque. Do Thiago Buarque, desculpa.
So I will say it's complementary. So Elements Cloud is, similar to Hubble, right? Because then an org discovery, right? Copado AI can do some of it. The intent is, we complement and integrate with, Hubble as an example. We don't have an integration with Cloud today, but we do have an integration with Hubble, whereby leveraging both solutions, right? Hubble as an example, where Elements Cloud can give you the insight of, your basically map the entire org for you. Then you have Copado as the action layer to be able to action on that technical depth. So some of those tools like Elements and Hubble will show you where the technical depth is. Copado will be the engine to help you in action and reducing that technical depth and able to actually do the work, if that makes sense. So complementary.
Ok, Carlos, thank you. Tem uma pergunta do Maurício, perguntando se aqui ele colocou, né, se ia ser falado alguma coisa de back promotion. Ele já saiu, mas eu entendo que ele gostaria de saber se a ferramenta, né, se o Copado AI apoia algum ponto referente ao back promotion, né, dentro da esteira.
So, Kevin, the question is going to be, will the Copado AI be able to help with the back promotions, and what type of features will be included in that?
Yeah, we're exploring ways in which the AI is going to directly assist with back promotions. But one of the things that you can do is you could lay out your situation. I would use the release agent and say, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing a back promotion of the available user stories back down into Dev 3, let's say. But I don't want X, Y, or Z to happen. I'm worried about this, or which user story should I group together and why?" And it will analyze all that and give you some recommendations. But that's kind of where we're at with it today. And we're looking for ways that the AI actually can tie into existing automation that you can configure from within CI/CD to make even more intelligent decisions around back promotions.
Ok, great. Thank you, Kevin. Não sei se alguém ainda tem mais alguma dúvida. Se alguém tiver mais alguma dúvida, fica à vontade em perguntar. Se não, eu vou fazer o sorteio do voucher da Salesforce. O Thiago, fica à vontade aí, Thiago. Abre o microfone enquanto eu arrumo aqui o arquivo, tá bom?
Okay, no problem. Really quick, I'm pretty rookie on Copado, so can you guys point me the direction, like how do I start? I'm pretty familiar with other tools, but not Copado, so where should I start in terms of certification or knowledge? Okay.
Fundamentals 1 is your starting point, and then fundamentals 2 is the secondary to that one. We do have a third certification, which is called extensions builder. It's here, but that focuses more on how do you actually extend the Copado platform into building your own agents and so on. So fundamentals 1 source format is the answer for you. And if you want to use the freemium version, if you want to just get a better understanding of how you can use it with the prompts that you get a lot as the premium.
Okay. Thank you. One last question. So I'm seeing here, looks like the Copado certifications are not integrated with the Salesforce, the Trailhead and Salesforce system. Yeah, like MuleSoft, is still separated.
Correct. Now, Copado is a different company. So therefore, it wouldn't be part of the Trailblazer certification. So Copado has its own level of certifications. You do get a certificate at verification, so you can actually showcase it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Legal. Vamos lá. Eu vou compartilhar minha tela. Ninguém tem mais nenhuma dúvida. Então, eu vou compartilhar minha tela. Eu já fiz aqui o tratamento, tá, do arquivo.
Bora lá que o time tá ansioso.
Vou compartilhar aqui. Sorteador. Deixa eu compartilhar aqui a tela do sorteador. Avisem para mim, por favor, quando vocês estiverem vendo.
Tá aparecendo já.
Estamos vendo.
Tá aparecendo, né? Tá bom. Então eu vou pegar aqui o nome de todos que compareceram à nossa sessão, tá? E agora é o sorteio do voucher Salesforce. Então, lembrando, todo mundo ganhou o voucher Copado. Espero que vocês tenham anotado os vouchers. Se não, Carlos, aí, se não tiver problema, depois eu envio, tá? Para as pessoas também que estiveram aqui conosco, eu vou reenviar, tudo bem? Os vouchers. E agora eu vou sortear o voucher Salesforce. Boa sorte aí para todos. E o ganhador, Steven Silveira, está conosco? Deixa eu ver. Steven Silveira, está conosco.
Tá conosco.
Tá conosco.
Tá.
Steven tá por aí, né? Ô, Steven, eu vou te mandar uma mensagem ao lado do chat tem um ícone DM, tá? Eu vou te mandar uma mensagenzinha oi, tá? Por favor, me envia seu e-mail pessoal, porque eu vou pedir para a Salesforce te enviar o voucher, tá bom? Parabéns. Você ganhou o voucher aí da Salesforce. Bom.
Será que o Steven entendeu, Chicão? Não sei se ele fala português, acho que sim, né?
Eu acho que fala. Steven tá aí?
Hi, Steven.
Às vezes não consegue.
Exato. Vou colocar no chat.
Bom, coloquei aqui no chat. Bom, gente, obrigado. Obrigado pela presença de todos. Espero que vocês tenham gostado. Obrigado ao time da Copado. Thank you, Copado team. Was really great, the presentation. We really enjoyed the presentation. The product is awesome, as
Thank
expected.
Yeah, we didn't have time, but we were hoping that if we had time, we would cover Agentforce testing. So obviously that's another hot topic on, every company wanting to deploy Agentforce agents. There's also some challenges within that, right? And how Copado can have you guys test the outputs that those, Agentforce agents are providing. So that's another topic more focused on how to build, deploy, and test those agents of Salesforce. Where if you guys are interested, something that we can talk about at a different date.
Okay, great. We will be very happy to have you here again. So, thank you, obrigado a todos. Espero que tenham gostado. Eu vou logo subir essa apresentação no YouTube. E aí eu divulgo certinho o vídeo. Novamente, obrigado a todos. E até a próxima.
Valeu, Chicão. Obrigado pela oportunidade.
Valeu, gente.
Valeu, comunidade.
Obrigado,
Copado. Valeu.
Obrigado, Marcelo.
Obrigado,
Valeu.
tchau.
Thank you. Bye,
Obrigado.
guys.
Tchau, obrigado.
Ô, Francisco, aproveitar que você ainda está online. Esse voucher é de qual valor dele?